Hello, this is Lauren Schaller, and I'm here to introduce myself and explain some of my thoughts on our first assignment on action research. Just a little bit about myself. I think I missed a slide. That is a picture of me off on the left there. I am currently a teacher at Dauphin County Technical School, and it is a career and technology education school, and we get students from all over Dauphin County. We have a bunch of sending schools, and students apply to go to our school. We are currently on a hybrid schedule, so students get a little bit of their program of study time and some academic class time. So I've been teaching here for about 3 years. I teach two different types of courses. I teach a freshman science course, and I also teach environmental science. So these are some images of some of the things that we've worked on, mainly water and water pollution and water quality testing and filtration of water. This is a view from my apartment. I live in Harrisburg City, right off of the Susquehanna River. When I can, I like to exercise. I am a board member of the Capital Area Science and Engineering Fair, which is totally virtual this year. And I spend a lot of time looking at wildlife outside my window. Definitely get to see a lot of interesting birds and hawks and bats and insects that like to climb along the window outside. And I like to play D&D. I am almost finished with this program. I'm doing the STEM endorsement, STEM concentration, and when I'm finished with this capstone class, I have one more class left, and then I will be done. So, did the two readings, and at first glance of the 4 stages of action research, I think I had a feel right away for which one I thought would be the most difficult. And then as I read, my suspicions were confirmed, and I'm thinking the first step is going to be the hardest, not just based on the readings in general, but also who I am as a person. I think that part of the difficulty is that when we set the whole stage for what it is we're going to be studying, and we have our driving questions, our research questions. It has to be, sufficiently rigorous, but still be doable and measurable somehow, and be something that's clearly present and can be explored, but doesn't already have some answer in prior studies, prior research, or not enough sufficient answer. So I feel like, you have to do all this work to get that first step, that first leap in defining what we're studying just right, kind of like Goldilocks. And there's a lot of pressure to get it just right, because if we don't do it correctly and we don't, get that first initial inquiry set just the right way, we're going to just stumble and fall down this whole research process, and it's just going to cause a lot of frustration, as was made pretty clear in the Ferrance reading. As I read the Mills reading, there are a lot of other things that just popped out to me that made me feel like the first step really will be the most difficult. How do we even know what we're looking for? There are just so many things that are happening in the classroom. Classrooms are messy, and kids, we have all these different variables that are thrown at us in the classroom, in a good way and a bad way, I suppose you could say. I'm not complaining here. I love teaching, but there's a lot to work through and a lot to decide on. There really are so many things that we could be studying, but how are these different factors in the classroom and our students' lives and our lives interlinked? So it's kind of a lot to work through. I also thought it was interesting that when we were identifying our problem area, we're also deciding on a philosophy of our research. Are we going to take more of a theoretical stance or a practical stance? To be honest, that was a little confusing to me in the reading, but it just kind of solidified my thinking that we had a lot to decide on at the outset. And there was a lot in the reading which actually kind of took on a negative tone, in my opinion, about the assumptions that we have as teachers, which surely we do. We have assumptions about what works, the way that we've always taught, not wanting to change our ways, or, we're thinking, oh, well, of course I'm going to use lecture to teach. What other way is there to get information to the students? That's the only way to teach, or other assumptions that seem safe, or, that we don't realize are clouding our judgment. And that could all, be something that affects our very first step in this research. And then I was really interested by the action research spiral, which is basically saying, this research is basically a huge, messy problem. It's not a straight line. It's not a perfect, you figure out what you're going to do, and then you study it and you collect your data. And it always has been presented before this as, just this nice, neat, linear process. And it's not. We're just going to have to constantly kind of re-identify what we're doing and question ourselves constantly as we go through this process. So we're going to have to refine what we're doing throughout. So I really think that makes it the most difficult. And, honestly, I'm the kind of person where I take forever to make decisions, especially right now, because we're in a pandemic and we're having to make so many changes, and there's so many approaches, so much information, so many strategies, so many opinions about how to handle teaching right now. It's pretty overwhelming. So it's just really hard to make a decision about teaching in general, let alone about this study. Question number 2, what are the obstacles in making action research something that we do every day? I have to say I agree with the teacher that Mills referred to, saying, oh, well, this teacher, thinks it's going to take so much extra time. Well, even with, Mills' counter to what the teacher was saying, I have to agree. He says we do have to learn the process of research and make sure it's authentic research, but we also have to communicate results. And I'm thinking about this class, and I'm also thinking about, if we were to do action research like the ladies in those case studies that we read about, we would be, a lot more collaborative work on the side of teaching, although I understand that in the end, it benefits us quite a bit. But it does seem to me that even still, it's going to take extra time. And with all the changes that are happening right now, and we're just living day to day, and, could go into remote learning completely at any moment. So we're just kind of living on the edge of our seat right now as it is. I think this is kind of interesting. The results of my study. What if, a lot of action research has to do with making change, taking research and doing something with it, causing an improvement, really living up to the name action research. What if I discover something and I don't have the power to really change it? What if it's something that, as a, run-of-the-mill, teacher in the classroom, I don't have administrative capabilities? What if it's something I can't change? Or maybe something like in students' lives, for instance, what if the only reason students are having a hard time with some project or their learning is because they have some horrendous home life, and there's only so much that I can do about that? There are things I can do to address it, but not completely. And lastly, I think that to engage in this, it just seems to me like we need an in-depth understanding of what's really happening in our classroom. What are these variables at play, and how are they connected to the possible problems? I tend to have a good understanding of my students, but what if I'm going down a path in my research and it's really hard for me to understand, what factors are connected to each other? What if, and on top of that, what if students aren't unwilling to cooperate? What if what if I can't get to the root of the problem because, they're hiding it, maybe not trying to hide it, or maybe because they just are embarrassed about something in their lives and they don't want to reveal it? I feel like Deborah South's case study, which we read at the very beginning of the book, really, it seems that she had some issues with this. In our third question, which story of the two did I resonated with me more? And this was a tough decision, but I feel that the first one, which was Rebecca Wisniewski's story in the School of Massachusetts, just kind of resonated with me more. I'm not sure what that really means, resonated with me, but I liked it. I identified maybe a little bit more with it. It made more sense to me as a teacher. I liked the focus on projects over testing. In the other story, the focus, it was very testing driven. In my classroom, I tend to do more project focus. I'm actually really starting to drive farther and farther away from testing. I liked the authentic end product. So in project-based learning, you're supposed to have this project at the end, and the students are really supposed to have something that they can use, communicate, do something with that's outside of the classroom. And that's what this project did with the newspaper and the parents. So I thought that was really neat, and had this nice extra effect. I loved her quote, "It is powerful to listen to students and just listen to what they have to say about their own learning. What is it that they're having problems with, and just let them tell you." To me, it really felt like her case study was much more of a qualitative than a quantitative focus. And I don't know if this just goes back to my days in anthropology. I studied at Millersville years ago. But qualitative research tends to make more sense to me, although quantitative, of course, has its own benefits. There was a lot about the students' background and their family connection, which I thought was a good approach. I felt that this case study had a lot of detail in the process itself of the research with the participants of the research. In the second one, there was definitely a lot that the teacher said about her research group, but I didn't feel like she had a lot to say. There was like a paragraph or two about how she interacted with the participants and how the research happened. Not that it was less valuable, but there's definitely a lot more explanation in the first one. And I also wanted to say, just to go back for a second, quantitative research, the second story did seem to have more measurable findings, because it was more of a quantitative approach in counting. There seemed to be data that maybe could be a little clearer. I wasn't too clear in the first story what the findings really led to. There were a few hints, but I feel that maybe there were more measurable findings in the second one. And I really liked this last quote here, that doing action research can help us focus our energy in a positive way. And this really resonated with me, because right now, teachers in the building, right now we're preparing for school to start next week, and there's so much frustration and anxiety right now. And to take that energy and to try to propel it forward in a positive way is hard to do. But it's definitely just kind of reading that sentence just made me feel better. It made me feel better about the research I'm about to undergo in this class. Like, this is, it's going to be, a little bit of a commitment, but it's going to ultimately make you a better teacher. Doing this is really just going to have a powerful impact. I do have concerns, though. My concerns I mentioned already in this presentation. What if I don't do a good job belaboring and deciding, and then finally I pick a topic and I didn't identify it very well, I didn't define it very well, and what if I have a lot of assumptions that I don't realize I have? I kind of doubt that, but it's possible. What if I failed to address the question with my design? What if I get this data and it's useless, or I just don't connect the dots very well? What if I don't get the data I need in the time that I have, and I have to throw something together and it just feels like I didn't really find anything, or there was nothing, it just kind of falls flat and I feel like it just wasn't very good? And what if I do this work and it ends up just kind of being another project in a class and it doesn't help my future teaching? That's something I'm worried about. So I'm really hoping that with this project I can really sink my teeth into something that I really am going to use heavily in the future. And that is my presentation. Thank you.